All right, 2021 Mazda CX-5 with a 2.5 liter engine. This is the non-turbo model. We're gonna do dry belts. One belt drives the alternator and the compressor, and the other belt drives the water pump. Now, I believe the belt that drives the water pump is a stretch belt, and we're gonna show exactly how that gets removed and installed. So yeah, let me grab the camera, let me point at the area where I'm working at, and let's get to it. All right, so I have the vehicle on jack stands, just the front of the vehicle, as you can see here. I haven't removed anything. This is how much space you get with the wheel turned all the way to the right. So I'm just gonna go ahead and remove that right front wheel. And I have actually removed the bottom engine cover, a bunch of 10mm bolts and a couple of clips that here in place. Now, I've actually never done dry belts on this particular engine before. I've actually done it on the turbo engine on a Mazda CX-9 2016. This doesn't look any easier. So I remember doing it on the Mazda right from the bottom. So I think I'm going to tackle these also from the bottom, because it's almost like doesn't seem like I have a clear path this way. But let's just try the bottom. I was doing an oil change on this car, so I'm actually already jacked up. And yeah, let's just continue by removing this front tire. All right, so I removed the wheel. I removed the side cover. It takes 4 clips to remove that side cover. Actually 5 if you count that one, because that one is tucked, or the cover goes, it tucks behind this one, and then you have to remove that one. Now for the belts. So here's the best shot I could give you. Now you'll have to pardon me, I'm a one-man show here. I don't have a cameraman, but I'll do the best I can. So this, where I have my flashlight pointing at, that's the water pump. And then this area over here, we have the AC compressor and the alternators right above. So this one's easier to do. This is the first one we're going to take off. And we're going to do that by operating that tensioner over there. So I'll put an arrow right where you should be using your whatever tool you're going to use. I'm probably just going to use a ratcheting wrench in order to do that, and then I'll remove that belt. So this stretch belt, in order to take it off, you could cut it off because you're not going to reuse it again, and place it on the crankshaft and partially place it on the water pump pulley, and then spin that crankshaft with your hand. Try to walk it or guide it into that pulley. Make sure it doesn't come off until you'll see it that it's fully seated on there. Hopefully that works, and it should work. And then we'll finish off by installing the cert belt over here. All right, so now, as you can see, and I hope I'm giving you a good image on here, this is a 1719 ratcheting wrench. I placed it right here. It's a 17. And then now slowly, I'm going to gradually pry or compress that cert belt tensioner. And you can see we have slack here. So now we're just going to remove that belt. Just like so. So that was the easy part. And I'm just gonna slowly let go. There we go. And I'm gonna be replacing these belts with aftermarket dry belts. I'm gonna cut this, but I usually don't like cutting them as long as I have an OEM factory belt, because I want to make sure the numbers, the part numbers match. That way I know I have the right belt. I'm gonna take a chance here. I'm gonna say that the guy at the store gave me the correct belt, and I'm gonna take a razor blade and I'm just gonna cut this. And there we go. Okay, so I have removed both of my belts. This one's still hanging on here, but I'm gonna start out by, all right, so this is my new belt. This is the one I just cut and removed from the vehicle. And sure, this is a stretch belt, and I hope that it has stretched enough. Therefore, they don't really match if we're going by size here. You can see that the new one's slightly smaller in diameter. I'm gonna say has stretch, and the fact that I cut it and I'm not closing it all the way here, then that's the reason why the older one seems slightly bigger than the new one. So let's go ahead and install this. Okay, so this part is going to be very hard to show, but what I'm doing here is I'm making sure that this belt is actually on the further part of the crankshaft pulley, and however much of the belt I can place on the pulley itself, that's as far as I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna hold it with my hand, and then with my other hand, I'm gonna spin the crank. So the crank bolt is a 21 millimeter. I have it ready down here, and then we're gonna spin this. And what I'm essentially doing right here by spinning the crank is I'm walking the belt on the pulley like this. Obviously, I have to place my hand on there, but you get the idea. Okay, so if I block out that part of where I'm installing the belt, you already know why. All right, this is where I wish I had those Meta AI glasses, because I couldn't have the camera underneath and be able to work without knocking it off the stand. It was just almost impossible. So I'm gonna place my belt on the pulley first, on the water pump pulley, and we'll try that this way. I usually like to get the, whenever I walk a belt, I like to walk it onto the smaller pulley last. But let's try, since this is a stretch belt, let's try doing the crankshaft pulley last and see how that works. All right, I tried to get you a shot from up here, but it was impossible. Eventually, the camera ended up falling. It was very, very hard to put this belt on. So it's not impossible. It just takes a little bit of patience. And what I've done here is I did a little hack, and I placed 2 zip ties on a portion of the water pump pulley. And then what I'm going to do is route the other portion of the belt on the crank pulley, just like this. As I'm holding it in here, I'm going to turn this crankshaft, right, clockwise, this way. And as I'm holding the belt right here, it should be able to go on because it's a stretch belt. So let's do this. All right, so I did my best to try to get you a nice shot of installing this belt, but it was almost impossible because I had to rotate the crank, and I was going this way, and my camera's placed right here. So it was like almost impossible not knocking off the camera. So I apologize about that, but I hope you got some kind of reference on how I did it. What I ended up doing is putting 2 zip ties on there and rotating the crank, but that was very hard, and I went back to my original method where it was routing the belt on the crankshaft pulley first, and then getting as much of the remaining portion of the belt onto the water pump pulley, and then tying it off with a zip tie, and then whatever was left over and I couldn't get, then that would be fine because I was rotating the crankshaft, and then eventually the belt was able to get walked on. Now, I'm gonna be honest, when I did it, it was hard. The zip tie ended up breaking off, and I tried it again. It did work at the second time, but it was almost on partially and not fully into the entire pulley area. So what it ended up doing is actually rotating the crank a little bit counterclockwise, and then once I did that, when I went back on the crank, then it walked on perfectly, and then I went forward again, and then I just did a full revolution, and it just the way it's sitting on there right now. So it's great. So now let's move on to this easier part. And this belt shouldn't take too long because it's actually easier. It just has a start belt tensioner. So we're gonna start on let me turn the camera this way. All right, so we're gonna start it with the alternator. And now that I'm fully engaged on the alternator, I'm going to get the bottom portion of the compressor, and then I'm going to make sure my smooth side of the belt, not the rib side, is on the tensioner. Okay, there we go. And then I want to take in my 17 ratcheting wrench. I'm going to pull gradually on the tensioner, and now I got enough slack, and that helped me put the belt on. So my belt now is on, and I want to further inspect, make sure it's on every pulley, so it looks good on the compressor, looks good underneath the tensioner pulley, and it looks like it's fully seated on the crankshaft. And on the alternator, looks good too. All right, so now I'm going to spin this crank. Okay. Once I spun it, felt good. Now I'm going to take a further look and make sure everything's sitting correctly where it should be. And everything looks good. All right, so shields back on, the lower bottom shield and the side shield, install the wheel, make sure you torque those lug nuts to specs, and ran the car for about 2 to 3 minutes, shut it off, took a good look with a flashlight, everything looks good. Now, if this is your first time doing it, I highly encourage you to do it. It's not the easiest of the belts, especially that stretch belt, but I wish I could have gotten you a better shot of that install. Unfortunately for me, again, it's just a little challenging having the camera on there and working it by myself. So with that being said, I hope this was helpful. I hope this was guideful for you. Give it a like, consider subscribing, and as always, thanks a lot for educating yourself, making progress, and best to you.